Hey loves, it's Brenna Paxton, your guide to astral and earthly travel. So good to see you today. I really want to talk about taking responsibility for ourselves and the immense amount of power that we all have, especially as it relates to the environment. Australia is up in flames right now. It's incredibly sad. It hurts my heart to really comprehend that we live in the time when we get to watch our earth revitalize itself despite all of the, or not even despite, but because of all of the harm as humans we have inflicted upon the earth. Now, I want to say right up front, my dad's a geologist. I grew up learning a lot about the earth and how it works. And something I think that isn't often mentioned when talking about global warming or climate change is that global warming was always going to happen. Humans haven't necessarily caused it to happen, but we have profoundly sped up the process. And also, I don't necessarily know if it would have happened in the way it's happening, but the climate would have changed regardless over time. And I think the reason that that's important to talk about is because for some reason it kind of removes the power from people who are climate change deniers. Because the truth, I think people deny climate change because they are trying to deny human responsibility or impact. But when you remove the human element of it and just say climate change would happen regardless, that's just a scientific fact. That somehow also removes the ability to then shift blame or act as though it has nothing to do with you, right? It does have to do with us. And it also doesn't, in the sense that this is a thing that would be happening, that is happening, that we need to figure out what to do about it. And part of that is not contributing to it constantly evolving at a more rapid pace, which too late for that. We've already done that. So anyway, I was reading articles last night and paying attention to what's going on with all of the fires in Australia. And I came across this article with someone who was in a small town that was completely isolated by all of the fires. All of the roads had been closed off. There was no way to get in or out of that area. There were people there that were trying to figure out how they were going to potentially evacuate, saying that they had 2 large boats, but they didn't know if they were going to be able to get fuel or not for the boats. All forms of communication had been cut off except for satellite email, and that was how this email was being sent. And essentially the email was saying we are alive, but we do need help. Oh my gosh, it just breaks my heart. And then I was reading about how koalas and their entire environment is now destroyed and they are basically functionally extinct. And I cried about it for a little bit. And then I got really upset and angry. And I was thinking about how in this email that I was reading from the person who was stuck, they were trapped. I was thinking about how, imagine that your house is on fire, or your city's on fire, or your country's on fire. But imagine that your city's on fire, your neighborhood. And you notice that there are people trapped in there. There's people trapped that might die. that need to get out. Imagine that for a minute. And my question for you is, do you even take a minute to say, I wonder if I agree with that person's political beliefs. Oh, I wonder what their religion is. Oh, I wonder what color their skin is. I wonder if those people are worth saving. I wonder if I should go in there and help them. Okay, I'm sorry, but no human goes through those thoughts if they do something's very wrong. But no normal human would say those things. You would, without a doubt, without a hesitation, you would do whatever you could do to figure out how to help those people, or how to help those animals, how to help whatever living being it is that needs help desperately. You wouldn't ask those questions. So my thinking there is, the reason I say that is because when the stakes feel lower, when your house isn't literally on fire, when we're just going about our daily lives, people do start to ask those questions. People start to say, I wonder, is that person worth my time? Is that person worth my compassion? Is that group of people worth my thoughts or awareness? And then we somehow get to the conclusion that no, they aren't. That's why our world is so divided. We make the other into something that's not even human, that's not even a sentient being. We somehow decide that people that aren't like us, people that believe different things than us, people that have different values than us, that have different skin colors, that have different backgrounds, we somehow decide that they aren't worth helping or listening to or even just respecting. But when suddenly your house is on fire, your neighborhood is on fire, your humanity kind of kicks back into gear. Your need to truly help someone in need comes forward in full force because it's our natural state. Our ability to empathize with the other, our ability to have compassion for the other, our ability to put ourselves in their place and then panic for them when a dire situation is happening just kicks into gear. But it has to be close to home in order for it to really hit us in that way often. Not always. If you're already a really empathetic person and whatnot, then definitely not always. But I just find that in the general population and society as a whole, if things aren't super close to home, it's easier to ignore and act like it's not a problem. So people do that. They just dismiss it. And that truly, what that is it's a fear. It's fear of facing the fact that it does matter, that other people do matter, that the environment matters because it's our home. It's the fact that if we are to truly face the fact that these things do matter, it means we have to take responsibility for them. And people don't want to do that. People are too scared. People are too afraid. People are too terrified. People don't know what to do. So ultimately, I'm not even necessarily trying to be like, I'm not trying to shame people or shame you. I'm trying to instead say, there's no need to be so fearful of our impact and power. Because truthfully, when something feels really daunting, when something is huge and scary, whether it be climate change or Australia burning or the political divide, or sending more troops to Iran, or whatever it is, like whatever the thing is that feels really daunting. I mean, there's a ton of these issues. That's the problem. There's all these huge issues that need to be fixed that feel really daunting. And it feels really confusing. Like, how could I possibly contribute to this huge systemic problem? And then it feels defeating and deflating. And we think, oh, there's no way I, as one person, can contribute to solving this problem. So then we get scared and sad and think, oh no, is there even a way to solve the problem? Maybe there isn't. And then we panic, and then that sends us into this whole desire to no longer feel these fearful, panicking emotions, which makes sense because that's terrifying. So then we start to figure out ways in our mind, we start justifying ways to escape from these negative feelings. I'm not saying that you should dwell in a bunch of negative emotions. That's not necessarily productive, but we naturally kind of go into this mode where we don't want to feel these things. We don't want to really look these things in the face. So instead, we start figuring out ways to justify getting out of the responsibility of those things. We start saying, like I was just mentioning, we diminish our own power. We say that there's no way that us alone would be able to do anything. There's no way that even 10 people doing something would be able to do anything. We start saying that it's someone else's responsibility because someone else is the expert on this topic, someone else has more influence, someone else has more power. Whatever the excuses are. I mean, sometimes we even go so far as to say, whatever is happening, I'm just going to go with it and let this whole disaster just unfold in a tumultuous way, and I'm just here for the ride. But dude, none of that is true. Like, the biggest thing that I want to communicate to people is how powerful each of us really is, and how you are powerful regardless of if you're going to embrace that concept or not. And that's why it's so dangerous, because we have immense power and impact, each of us individually. And when each of us starts denying that power, we're effectively choosing to be unconscious with that power and impact. So we consciously choose unconsciousness. And in doing so, we say, I relinquish the responsibility that I have with my power and impact. I'm relinquishing this responsibility, and in doing so, I am allowing my power and impact to be manipulated by societal programming, to happen on autopilot, to be used for negative effects, excuse me, rather than positive ones. Because when they're unconsciously playing out, when your life is running unconsciously, you aren't considering what impact that has on the world, on others, on yourself, on your life, on the environment. And it's time that we stop denying that we are intrinsically interconnected. And when you harm the environment, you are harming yourself. That is a fact. That is not even an energetic weird thing. Like, yes, it's energetic and spiritual, but it's literally a physical fact. We are of this earth. It is literally our home. We cannot live without it. So in destroying it, we are destroying ourselves. Then you can extend that further. This is sometimes hard for people to truly grasp on a real level, but on a very real, physical, tangible level, all humans are interconnected. If you harm another human, you are harming yourself. And it's now time that we're going to start seeing the repercussions of these things in real time. Before, anything in the physical world takes some time to unfold, cause and effect, karma. So it's easier to act as though whatever you did over here isn't related to this thing over here. But guess what? It is. It's completely related. It's one and the same. So when you say anything at all, it has impact profoundly on other groups of people, on the energy of the world, on the environment, on yourself, on your own well-being, everything. Even if you can't directly see the tie immediately, I assure you and I promise you, they are completely interconnected. So if you say something, if you do something, there will be a consequence. There will be an impact. There will be something that happens in effect because of the cause that you did, that you said, that you created. Always, without a doubt, there will be an impact and a result of anything you say or do. So my question then is, do you want to be conscious of the impact that you have on life? Do you want to be aware of how you're impacting other people, of how you're impacting yourself, of how you're impacting the environment? Or do you just want to let it happen and play out? If that's your response, that you just want to let it play out, I get why. It's easier, potentially, in the short term. But you really can't do that anymore. Like, you should have never done that. None of us should have ever done that, but that's how we've all been raised. We didn't quite have the foresight, I suppose. But now, especially, I don't think you can escape it anymore. I don't think humans can just do whatever they want and act like it's no big deal. It is a big deal. And the reason that this feels so potent is because of the environment. If you want to watch your world burn to the ground and just shrug it off, fine. I can't change you, I guess, right? But the consequences are going to start picking up from the actions that we have been inflicting on this planet. And with everything we do, we are going to notice that it has impact. And we can no longer deny our interconnectedness. And what's so interesting about this, about not denying our interconnectedness, is that what I've been going through lately, what I've been realizing and discovering, is that in my past, when some people mentioned something, said something that was, maybe slightly racist, or, someone chooses to, they have regular, like a ceramic plate right there and silverware, and they, at a restaurant, and they choose to grab a bunch of plastic and then a styrofoam container and disposable fork or something. Maybe I would have just ignored it in the past, or, well, I don't know if I would have ignored a slightly racist comment. I don't know. I probably did, because we all have to go through a time period of like learning how to speak up about things, and that's difficult. I get that. I definitely get that. That is difficult. I'm not trying to undermine that or downplay it. But it's not as difficult as all of the consequences and the impact that all of those negative things have on the world. Those are real problems. The world burning to the ground, everything flooding, glaciers melting, animals going extinct. That's a real problem. Being uncomfortable because you have to speak up about something is not a real problem. You can acknowledge it, but it doesn't compare to the real things going on. Someone being dehumanized, someone upholding racist values, someone perpetuating a system that does not acknowledge the humanity of entire groups of people. That is profoundly dangerous. That's a real problem. Not you being uncomfortable to call out the racist comment. That doesn't compare to the real problem. So it's like, I want people, and I'm trying to do this myself too. This is what I'm working on right now too. I want everyone to start really considering that every single thing they do or say or think or believe always has an impact. Always. You cannot deny it. You cannot escape it. So, because we're all so interconnected, as an undeniable fact, I now have this weird struggle with not calling anyone out. I kind of know, I no longer subscribe to the idea that you do you, I'll do me. We can disagree and do things in different ways, which yes, we can disagree and do things in different ways, but you're no concern to me and I'm no concern to you. That part I cannot get behind because it's not true. What you do does impact me. What I do does impact you. I don't care if I'm never gonna meet you in real life. Everything I do impacts you and vice versa. It impacts the entire world. So if I see someone just, dumping a bunch of styrofoam and plastic and whatever onto the side of the street, well, I'm not gonna pull my car over. Maybe I would actually. Maybe that's the level we really need to take it to. But I mean, when you're just living your daily life and you see someone really do something that harms the environment, is it appropriate to just let them do it? Or is that incredibly irresponsible? Because it isn't just oh, whatever, they can do what they want, doesn't matter. No, it matters. It does. You're destroying my planet. You're destroying our planet. You're contributing to carelessness, unawareness, unconsciousness, fear, consumerism, overconsumption. Ugh, all of these things that are just not beneficial. Goodness gracious, I'm upset about it. So what I was talking about in terms of taking responsibility for the power and impact we have, the thing is that the way that we get into these huge problems is by denying our impact. By every single person saying, I don't really have power. What I do isn't going to contribute much. Okay, well then you multiply that by a few million. That creates a huge impact, a negative one. When a couple million people all decide, oh, it doesn't matter. Let's just do whatever. It doesn't matter if we do this negative thing. It won't have negative consequences. Or, not even thinking about the consequences. They don't even get that far. Because the purpose of denying our impact is to not have to acknowledge that many of the things we do have negative consequences, have a negative impact on others in the world. And no one wants to admit that. That's what I was talking about with fear. People are afraid of those things. People are afraid of those giant problems. People are afraid of, I think deep down, no one really wants to be full of hate and contribute a lot of hate and bad things to the world. If they do, they're super far down that whole path and they need a lot of healing. But I do think on the majority level, even just a normal regular person that's doing okay is going to deny the fact that they probably do a lot of things that have a really negative impact on the world. People don't want to admit that to themselves. I get it. But we have to admit it, because if we're not willing to have awareness around it, then we're never going to be able to change anything. We have to be able to say, okay, this thing I'm doing isn't as efficient as it could be. What are other options? And then if you're actually open to talking about it, you can compare other options with other people. We can start discussing possible solutions. The reason problems like this that are so huge feel so daunting is because we don't have any solutions that feel accessible to the average everyday person, because it's not incorporated into our common knowledge or our daily routine. And the more people talk about it, and the more people spread awareness about it, and the more people educate others on various options, the more familiar it seems, the safer it feels. It's not as scary, it's not as freaky, it's not as far-fetched. And then we're able to incorporate those things slowly into our daily life, or hopefully quickly. But again, that's what I mean, is that we just need to change, period. It needs to happen, even if it happens slowly, like fine, kind of. But we need change to happen. So any change happening is going to be more beneficial than no change happening, right? So if it has to happen slowly versus not at all, I'd rather it happen slowly. But so, I just really want to reiterate that we each have a profound impact. If you're unconscious of your impact, if you're not thinking about it, then it is essentially running your life. Your life will be running on autopilot. Your life will be operating in a very unconscious way that does not necessarily contribute positively to the world. And that is a problem. So if you care at all about anything, about love, about humans, about just one other person or your pet or a really pretty tree in your backyard, or even just the fact that you have a roof over your head, or even if you don't have any of those things and you know that there's still some hope out there, because there is, I strongly encourage you to consider your impact and to take it seriously and to stop living from an unconscious place. Why choose ignorance? I understand ignorance is bliss, but not when this shit starts being thrown in your face. It feels like sticking a dog's face in its poop. Like, don't do this again. Like, that's gonna start happening to us. It's happening now. It's been happening, but it's been less prominent, easier to ignore. But now the consequences are going to be very real. They're already very real, but we're not going to be able to deny them. And especially like even in terms of heightened intensity amongst people in social groups, I think the consequences are going to be very much in our face. And we cannot deny this. I'm just saying that over and over, but it's because it's so true. I just really want to reiterate that. And I feel like I still have one more thing to say. Gosh, there's all this beeping outside. I don't know if you can hear it, but it's distracting my flow. Dude, it's crazy. I guess I just want to say that, like, choosing ignorance, choosing unawareness, which is consciously choosing unconsciousness, is not the solution. It's a temporary solution. It's escapism. It is you deciding that this is too much and you don't want any part of it. But you can't choose to not be a part of this. I'm sorry. I know that that's an annoying statement. We don't want it to be true. Life is hard. But if you're alive, if you're a sentient being, then this is your responsibility. This is your responsibility. You are a part of this and you cannot escape it, no matter how hard you try, no matter how much you wish, no matter what you want to believe or ignore. You can't escape it. And I don't want to be all doom and gloomy about that or depressing. I want to be empowering about it, because you do have an impact and you can contribute positively and you can change the world, and you will if you start taking ownership of yourself, if you start taking responsibility for your impact. You have an impact no matter what. Either take responsibility for it or take responsibility for it. And so I think that's what I meant by it's no longer, it never was, but it's no longer okay to just go about life acting like you don't have an impact. So when someone says comments that are negative towards another group of people, when someone does something that harms the environment, when someone is discussing a belief that is not beneficial to humanity or to truth or to love, that is rooted in fear or hatred, that has a huge impact. So what's strange about that, right, is because we are all undeniably interconnected as a fact. I'm like conflicted about this statement that I'm about to say. Because what I want to say is that we do have a responsibility to hold other people accountable. The reason I'm conflicted about that statement is because it's a fine line. We can't force other people to change. And I don't want you to go around being all antagonizing towards people, because people will just be defensive. No one will listen to you. That's not an effective way to communicate change. But we can guide each other and support each other towards positive change. Really, the point is to hold awareness up for someone who lacks awareness in a certain area. Just present the awareness to them in a very kind and loving way. That's the only way anyone's going to listen to you. And again, since everything we do has impact, I want that impact to be positive. The whole point of this, the whole point of cultivating an awareness and of no longer denying our impact, is to take responsibility for the fact that we can contribute positively. Our impact can be positive if we have awareness of it. If you don't have awareness, like 80% of the time, it's not going to be a positive impact. And maybe that's a high percentage. I don't know, but it's just like, it's so unpredictable. How are you ever going to know if you're contributing positively if you're just blindly doing stuff? Like, it most likely is, if it's not thoughtful, if it's not intentional, then it's most likely not going to be positive. It's just going to like play out without any consideration of other people, of yourself, of the environment, it's just so selfish. And it's short-sighted. So when someone does something that is concerning, it does impact you, and it is beneficial to speak up about it. But you don't have to, it depends on the severity of like what it is that they're doing. Every situation calls for something different. But you can just simply say like, hey, have you considered the fact that this is like all of this styrofoam that you just picked up is potentially just going to, or not potentially, it will just never decompose in the earth and really contribute to our environment and our home being injured, like suffering. And it, like there's this plate right here, like maybe you could use this instead. Or like, hey, I actually have a Tupperware in my bag. Would you like to borrow it instead of using that styrofoam so it's a more environmentally friendly option? Like, you can be nice about things and still just kind of like hold awareness up for someone. Being judgmental is never helpful, really. So I'm not saying that we should be going around like shaming everyone, but it is our responsibility to hold this awareness, to know the power of our impact, and then to help other people remember that. It really truly is in those small changes and those daily actions when they compound upon each other, both in your own life and then when other people start doing them too, it does create a huge, tangible change. And acting like it doesn't is what gets us into these huge problems. It's how we've gotten where we are, is by acting like everything we do has no consequences. It does. So it's time we take our power back. You've always had this power. You're either using it consciously or you aren't. You don't need to go on this huge long journey to reclaim your power. Like, yeah, it's a journey, and there are aspects of it that, yes, you can go on a journey to reclaim your power, but you have so much power right in this moment, no matter what, no matter who you are, no matter what your past is like. It doesn't matter, because you intrinsically have this power within you. You always have and you always will. So either use it, own it, use it for good, own your powerful impact, or let it just like run off unconsciously like crazy, and then start watching the negative consequences of that unfold in front of you. I don't want that for you. Be aware. Choose conscious control of your power to use it in a positive way. I love you. You're incredibly powerful, and you can create change. Sending you love, sending Australia love, sending so much healing energy to Gaia and the earth. And even more than just sending love and energy, I'm being aware of my actions, of my daily habits around consumption, around what I'm contributing to the earth, and how can I edit those habits? How can I alter them? How can I own my impact in a way that contributes more positively? How can I improve upon those things for myself in my daily life? And how can I positively influence others to begin this journey of awareness and positive conscious impact as well? I'll see you later.